Good day, Ma'am Anna, and to my fellow student teachers. I am Jamal M. Gutierrez, a fourth-year Bachelor of Secondary Education, majoring in Social Studies. Today, I am honored to present a crucial topic under Unit 2 of Field Study 1, Practical Foundations of Teaching, focusing specifically on Sub-Topic B, Classroom Management and Environment, creating inclusive learning environments. As a future educators preparing to step into actual school environments, classroom management is often misunderstood as simply keeping students quiet or maintaining discipline. However, through our field study observation, we realize that true classroom management is about creating an equitable, culturally responsive, and inclusive space where every learners grow. Let us explore how theory meets practice in the modern classroom.
To ground our discussion today, I want us to reflect deeply on a famous quote by Ignacio Estrada. If a child can't learn the way we teach, maybe we should teach the way they learn. During our observations in actual school environments, we frequently encounter classrooms filled with diverse learning profiles, students with ADHD, autism, or visual impairments, alongside learners coming from diverse linguistic and cultural backgrounds.
Estrada's quote challenges our traditional mindset. It shifts the burden of adaptation off the student's shoulders and places the responsibility where it belongs in our instructional design and classroom environment. By the end of our 10-minute session today, we will achieve 3K learning outcomes spanning knowledge, skills, and attitude. First, knowledge. We will distinguish between equality and equity, explaining how the neurodiversity paradigm and the least restrictive environment legal mandate form the bedrock of inclusive education. Second, skills. We will apply universal design for learning principles and differentiated instruction to design flexible learning activities that accommodate diverse needs without lowering academic standards. And third, attitude. We will internalize an asset-based mindset, one that views cognitive, cultural, and linguistic diversity as a classroom strength to be celebrated rather than deficits to be fixed. Let's unpack our foundational concept. First, we must clarify the difference between equality and equity. Equality means giving every single student the exact same resource. For example, giving every student the exact same textbook at the exact same reading level. Equity, however, means allocating resources based on individual needs so that every student achieves equal access to success. Next is the legal and ethical mandate known as the Least Restrictive Environment or LRE. LRA dictates that students with disabilities must be educated alongside their neurotypical peers in the general education classroom to the maximum extent appropriate, removing them only when specialized support cannot be achieved in that environment. Finally, we adopt the neurodiversity paradigm. This revolutionary framework views conditions like ADHD, autism, dyslexia, or Tourette's not as medical flaws or deficits to be repaired, but as natural, valuable variations of the human brain. When we adopt this perspective, our classroom management shifts from control to empowerment. Now, how do we proactively design a classroom for neurodiverse learners? The answer lies in Universal Design for Learning or UDL. Rather than tweaking a lesson plan after a student fails, UDL plans for diversity from day one through three core pillars. First one is the multiple means of engagement, the why of learning. This taps into student motivation, offers autonomy and choices, and connects learning to real-world social studies contexts or personal interests. Second, the multiple means of representation, the what of learning. This presents lesson contexts in flexible formats, combining printed text with audio options, visual diagrams, graphic organizers, and hands-on manipulatives. The third is the multiple means of action and expression, the how of learning. Instead of forcing every student to write a traditional essay, we allow them to demonstrate mastery through speeches, podcasts, or digital infographics or oral presentations. UDL ensures that barriers are removed from the curriculum, not from the learning standard. As a field study observers, we must learn to distinguish between accommodation and modification. This distinction is critical. An accommodation changes how a student accesses learning or demonstrate knowledge, while keeping the grade level learning standard completely identical. Examples include providing extra time on tests, using speech-to-text software, or providing large funds. The student is held to the exact same bar. A modification, on the other hand, changes what the student is expected to learn, meaning the standard itself is altered or simplified, such as reducing the reading level or shortening a rubric for severe cognitive impairments. To operationalize accommodations, we use differentiated instruction strategies. Tiering texts according to reading readiness, providing sentence stems for scaffolding writing, and chunking heavy assignments into manageable steps, and using product choice boards. An inclusive classroom management extends beyond cognitive differences to encompass culture, climate, and community. When we integrate culturally responsive pedagogy with restorative practices, classroom management transforms from punitive discipline into community building. Let's look closer at culturally responsive teaching or CRT. CRT is not just celebrating diverse foods or holidays once a year. It is instructional strategy that uses the cultural knowledge, prior experiences, and frames of reference of ethnicity, diverse students to make learning intellectually meaningful and cognitively accessible. There are three vital classroom elements in CRT. First, validating cultural and linguistic identity, integrating diverse literature, indigenous perspectives, and local community histories into our curriculum. Second, adopting a warm demander stance. A warm demander builds deep, authentic personal trust with students while holding uncompromisingly high expectations for their academic performance. Third, fostering collaborative structures, shifting from hyper-competitive individualism to communal, cooperative learning groups where students learn with from each other. In traditional classroom management, misbehavior is met with punitive measures, zeros, detentions, or suspensions, which exclude the student and break the learning relationship. Restorative classroom management completely flips this model. Restorative practices operate on 80-20 rule. 80% of our effort goes into proactive community building and 20% goes into repairing harm when conflict arises. What does this look like in daily practice? Daily morning or community circles where students check in emotionally, collaborative classroom agreements co-created with students rather than imposed rules. Affective statements that communicate feelings without placing shame. Restorative conferences that ask Whose was hurt? What are the needs? And how do we make things right? To conclude, teachers transforms inclusion from a mere theoretical idea into a lived classroom reality when shared responsibility, proactive UDL design, and a restorative culture come together. When our instructional choices are rooted in equity and access-based mindset, diversity stops being viewed as a classroom barrier and becomes our greatest strength. Every single learner receives the supports and dignity required to realize their full potential. Once again, this is Jamala M. Gutierrez, a Bachelor of Secondary Education majoring in Social Studies. Thank you for listening.